let's talk about the Powerpuff Girls reboot. Now, I know for me personally, I was waiting on a few episodes to sort of roll out so I could watch a bunch of them in bulk and see what I thought of it. And as that time passed, I heard some pretty bad stuff about it on Twitter and Tumblr and all the like, such as this tweet. "This is just f***ing sad. They're raping the corpse of the Powerpuff Girls at this point." And I saw plenty of tweets along those lines. People are not happy with this reboot. So after hearing all this, I couldn't wait any longer. I had to check it out. I watched about 12 episodes. And the first thing that I would say is it's not that bad. Now, having said that, I do have quite a few strong opinions about it, let's say. Let's travel back a little bit and talk about the Powerpuff Girls, which is one of my very favorite cartoons of all time. Along with stuff like Freakazoid and The Tick and Powerpuff Girls, these are shows that kind of skewer and twist the genre of superhero cartoons, which I was obsessed with as a kid and I still love them today. So taking this idea of these superpowers and giving them to characters that you wouldn't expect to have them, like the Powerpuff Girls or The Tick, it creates something really interesting, and I think that's where a lot of my love for the Powerpuff Girls came. As you can see from my channel banner, Bubbles is right there near me. It is a very special show to me, probably my favorite old school Cartoon Network show of all time. And when I say that, you're probably thinking, oh, Chad's gonna be some 90s butthurt kid who won't accept anything if it's not the way he remembers it. And that's not the case. You guys know the 2011 Thundercats is one of my favorite things out there, and it is a reboot of one of my favorite properties, a holy ground of cartoons, as I would say, with Thundercats. That's not something that you can mess with and get away scot-free. The 2011 reboot was a fantastic reimagining, keeping the key elements of the show, and I think it was criminally canceled. So let's get back to 2016 and talk about this Powerpuff Girls reboot. And the term you want to use to call it, whether it's reboot or reimagining, revamp, gets a little blurry, and there's another term I want to throw into the mix. I'm going to call it a bring back, and what I mean by a bring back is something like Arrested Development. It was a show that was canceled, and it was simply brought back and continued just the way you remember it. So when it came to this Powerpuff Girls reboot, I didn't really know what it would be, whether it would be an actual reboot or just kind of a bring back, more episodes of the same thing that we already loved, which would have been great. Now, after watching 12 episodes, how could I be confused about whether this is a bring back or a reboot? Well, we'll touch on that, but first I want to talk about what I do like about this new series, because there are some things that I think are done very well. First of all, the new villains that they've introduced are great. I think they seem to have come straight from the old show. They fit right in with all the villains. They're sort of these over-the-top, slightly inept, very high-concept villains. There's the Pack Rat guy, which I really love. Man Boy, which I thought was hilarious, and the two sisters who are all about fashion, even though one of them is like a giant, dumb gorilla. Those villains were all fantastic, well-designed, and I thought that they fit with the vibe of the show perfectly. Now, the reboot works very hard to sort of keep these Powerpuff Girls updated to modern times, sometimes to its detriment, but sometimes it works out. For example, the traditional Powerpuff Girls light-up clown phone thing is now like a smartphone, and I think that's pretty cool. There's a really funny bit where the girls play rock, paper, scissors, and they just kind of treat it like they knew which each other picked, even though they just have those club hands. It's a very like fun meta joke and something that old school fans would definitely get a kick out of, so I appreciated that. I also really enjoyed some of the design updates. I like how the girls now each have their own unique streak, so Bubbles is kind of a bubbly streak, Buttercup's is kind of jagged, and Blossom's is kind of straight streaks. I thought that was a really cool touch. It sort of elevates their concept without completely changing them or keeping them entirely the same. Now, there's some other smaller things that I enjoyed, but I want to move on to some of the other things that kind of, I'm not going to say that I disliked, but just kind of confused me a little bit. So let's get back to what I was saying about reboot or bring back, and why that was a confusion point for me. So we saw a long time ago this concept art for our new Powerpuff Girls series, and I really don't know whatever happened with that, or whether that was just like a fan art joke or what, but when you see that, and it'll be on screen right now, it's a total reimagining of the Powerpuff Girls. So when I saw those designs, I began to think, oh, well, maybe they're just kind of bringing the Powerpuff Girls back, just kind of continued on from where they left off. But then came the announcement that the Powerpuff Girls will be played by new actors. And if at any point in this process my inner butthurt fanboy comes out, it's at this point. But you gotta get over that and just understand that this is the way it's going to be. Clearly they're looking to sort of reinvent the show, change it up, and just sort of create their own thing. But then you watch the show and see that, like, everything else is exactly the same. Tom Kenny is still doing the mayor and the narrator. The narrator's still doing the intros just the way they used to. The same voice actor for Professor Utonium, same voice actor, same voices basically all around, except the girls. And even the girls themselves, especially Bubbles and Blossom, are doing, like, impressions of the old girls. The Buttercup one is a lot different, but I think that's because the original actress for Buttercup had a very distinct sounding voice. They're kind of doing the impressions of the girls, and it just has this weird feeling to it. Because it's like the girls as you remember them, but slightly off, but still in a world where everything is kind of the same. And this leaves the entire show to have this very bizarre gray area feeling because it can't decide whether it wants to reinvent the Powerpuff Girls for the modern age or whether it wants to just do what they were doing in the past. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. It gets caught in this very strange middle ground that left me personally feeling a little bit empty on the experience. There's a very strange mixture of kind of wanting to update this series. Like I said with the phone, that was a cool thing. But there's a lot of stuff that's not as cool. They go for this very regular show humor style, and it just, to me, it just doesn't work with the Powerpuff Girls. You've got Bubbles saying stuff like, I can't even, and this Rocktopus joke that was something to make you pull your hair out. Plenty of humor that just feels very forced because they want it to be like modern humor jokes. Another thing that just kind of irked me is the new theme song and the credits songs. I just hate them, to be honest. I really like the art style and the animation of the beginning. I really love the shot where all three of them are flying up and they kind of look at each other and you can see their hair blowing in the wind. It gives a lot more animation to the Powerpuff Girls than you're used to seeing, and that's really cool. But the music itself, I just don't like. And that credits song is... not for me. But then there's so much that's similar from the old show, like the bad guys are great, and the powers are great, and I actually kind of like the Green Lantern power thing. It was a little strange, but I can jump on board with that. But in general, it feels like the show wanted it both ways, and landed kind of in the middle to a sort of meh effect. So that's my opinion about it. I really don't think this is a bad show or as bad as the internet is saying. And if it gives younger fans an opportunity to introduce themselves to the Powerpuff Girls, it's not the worst way to meet them. They are very, very similar from what you remember. It's not a complete desecration of these characters like some other things that I can think of. So here's the deal. Am I going to continue watching this? Probably not. I mean, it's just too confused, for me personally. But at the same time, I have to admit it was cool to see the girls again, Mojo, Gangrene Gang, Fuzzy Lumpkin, some of the classics. That was cool, but I just don't think I can continue my journey with the show, even though I wouldn't be surprised if it continued on for a while. So I want to know a few things from you guys. What do you think of this new series, reboot, whatever you want to call it? What do you think of the strange casting, keeping some the same, replacing others for no real reason, or so it seems? And most importantly, will you continue to watch it? So there it is, all of my thoughts on the new Powerpuff Girls series. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time.